Welcome to Open BxRx Tuesday on BronxNet. I'm your host, Kibin Alleyne, and I'd like to invite you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. If you're like me, you probably have the Citizens app, so it should be no surprise that now more than ever, several communities in New York City are experiencing an alarming surge of violence. Executive Director of New Settlement, Rigaud Noel, joined me to discuss the wave of gun violence and crimes in the Bronx and the actions elected officials can take to address this critical issue. Rigaud, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Appreciate it.
So, our city continues to see crime after crime, and it's just only going up, unfortunately. And the majority of them are violent. Can you just speak to maybe why we're seeing such horrible acts being committed, especially during this time in the new year?
Well, I definitely think the pandemic plays a significant role in the impact it's having on our community. There's several contributing factors. You have food insecurity, housing insecurity, unemployment. You recently had the eviction moratorium that recently expired, so now people are even more concerned about having a roof over their head. And so, really, all of those contributing factors play a significant role in the community and sort of how they react, right? And so there needs to be a lot of resources that are dedicated to really address each of those issues, right? You have food insecurity. We need to provide our families with more food pantries, and really giving them the tools necessary so that way we can really live the lives that we want, right? And so the same thing with unemployment, right? November, I believe the unemployment was still double digits, 11.2% in the Bronx. And that's really a significant issue in itself because that means 1 in 10 people are not working. And so we really need to really invest a lot of resources in the Bronx.
Now, I'm happy that you're bringing up the Bronx because although this is a citywide issue, following Mayor Adams' announcement and his blueprint to end gun violence, can you just explain how this violence is actually specifically impacting the Bronx?
The NYPD recently released data showing that the Mount Eden section of the Bronx had an increase uh, of crime of about 29% compared to last year. And that is pretty significant considering that it actually is the first day in February. And so I think he is right to declare gun violence as a public health crisis. And I'm hoping that additional resources, especially in the Bronx, will be dedicated to address this issue.
Now, the gun violence we're seeing in our city is a little bit different from other states because they're illegal guns. How does this make this fight even harder?
Well, it's very hard. I know that the governor recently had a conference call with other states to address this issue. I believe local officials are referring to it as the iron pipeline, where guns are being transported illegally up the I-95 corridor, and that's making it extremely hard to really address it. So I'm hoping that the governor, as well as the leaders and elected officials in other states, can really figure out a solution to try to stop the guns from entering New York and really doing harm in our community.
Now, you previously mentioned that the mayor did categorize this issue as a public health crisis. We know that you agree. As a borough who's already experiencing so many disparities, especially within health already, how will this intersection stop the Bronx from making progress towards becoming a better borough?
Well, it, I feel like we're facing a public health crisis on so many fronts. We have food insecurity, which is really ravaged the Bronx. We have housing insecurity. As you know, we currently have about 225,000 evictions currently moving forward due to the eviction moratorium expiring, and 40% of that is in the Bronx. And so housing is also, to me, a public health crisis. And so I'm happy that the mayor designated gun violence as a public health crisis, and I'm hoping that designation will really de- allow the governor and other elected officials, even federally, to dedicate additional resources to the Bronx to really combat gun violence, as well as the other public health crisis that are currently going on, right? And so this is really one aspect of the issue.
Now, I think it's very important to know, and this can be a little bit sensitive, but this seems to be a recurring issue for low income areas. This is where we're seeing most of the crime happen. How do we address this without villainizing poverty? And then also, as far as like communities of color, it is usually like a lot of our men in our communities. So, how do we address that without making this community look like villains or bad people? How do you suggest that we go about that?
That's a great question, Kibin, because I think that we really have to have a multifaceted approach, right? We really need to look at college access programs, we need to look at workforce development programs, and we need to get people working again, right? And in order to do that, we need resources. And I know that I've mentioned that several times, but that's really what it's going to take to really address this issue, right? Someone should not be villainized for not finding a job, right? Or not providing food for their family because they really don't have the resources or there's not jobs out there. And so I want to make sure that the elected officials really hear me in that it's going to take funding, it's going to really take a collaborative effort to address this on a citywide level.
I'm so happy that you kind of like leading into that because I wanted to know how you think, state and local leadership should take action. Can you further explain?
Sure. I would say that they really need to invest in nonprofit organizations and really that are doing the work that are on the front lines, right? That's really the critical piece. As a nonprofit organization serving the Bronx, we provide workforce development programs, college access programs. We actually just built a food pantry this past summer to address the food insecurity needs. And really, the funding that are provided by elected officials go to combat this issue, right? We were recently selected by the governor and Assemblywoman Latoya Joyner, Assembly member Kenny Burgos to really take the lead in addressing the gun violence initiative in the Bronx, specifically targeting 17 zip codes that they've identified with high numbers of crime.
Okay, so this kind of goes into my next question. The mayor has a blueprint for how he wants to end gun violence, and he cites targeted precision policing as a method to address this issue. I think it could sound a little bit scary to somebody who doesn't know what it is, but do you feel this is a good start?
I do think it's a good start because I do think we need to start somewhere. And I know that he has a background in law enforcement, which I actually appreciate. Um, I think it is a good start. And I think we need to, as a community of color, I think we need to really give this a chance, right, before passing judgment. I really think that having targeted precision policing where it's not just a blank check and people are searched unnecessarily or illegally. But I do think having a targeted approach will help and it will help potentially catch some criminals and reduce crime. But there has to be a balance, right? There has to be a balance to make sure that our people are not being discriminated against and that it is done judiciously and is done with equity in mind.
Now, I want to focus on community leaders now because many community leaders like yourself are actually taking action. But I really want to know, do you feel that it is a responsibility of community leaders to make sure that they have a safe area to live for themselves and their community?
Well, I think definitely because I think this is really why we are here, right? We are here to make sure that our community members are safe. They are in a community where they feel comfortable and where they want to grow up with their kids, right? We want to make sure that whether they're in the Bronx, Westchester, Manhattan, or Brooklyn, that really it shouldn't matter the zip code that you're in, but you are comfortable in your community, you have a safe community, and this is where you want to be. And I think as a nonprofit organization, as any nonprofit organization would want, they want every member of their community to feel safe and to feel that they belong in their community and that they're appreciated.
Now, can you just quickly tell us about your initiative to kind of stop or end gun violence? I know your organization has one.
Yes, so we were selected by the state, as I mentioned earlier, to really lead the effort in the anti-gun violence initiative, and we're super excited that New York State really called attention to this important issue, and that we were pleased and surprised that we were elected to take the lead, and we took it with the bulls by the horn and really started our program immediately. Right, we had a kickoff party, we had a teen party. here at the New Settlement Community Center. We had over 200 teens participate. We had swimming, we had arcades. We really wanted to really launch it in a big way. And we had a line down the street of teens wanting to participate. And so really the program has really three core areas. One is we launched our Passport to Manhood program where 150 young men will be really participating in a series of workshops regarding life skills, workforce development, college readiness,
Mhm.
youth development, and then also have access to our facility where they would participate in swimming, have access to our dance room, our rooftop garden. And the same thing is being done for young women, right? So we have also a young women's program with the same core elements. And then we also partnered with Kips Bay Boys and Girls Club and the Northeast Bronx Y, where they also are participating in this initiative, providing their own programming targeting teens. And so the three organizations combined really are trying to address the significant issue across the 17 zip codes. So it's really a collaborative effort, and even I would even say a coalition of nonprofits trying to address this issue.
Rigo, thank you so much for joining me to discuss this very important issue, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. On the screen, you will see social media links and all of that, so you guys could keep up with him. And we'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.